This man could have saved millions of lives when he ran into Adolf Hitler in 1918, but he chose not to. Henry Tandey was Great Britain's most decorated private soldier to survive World War I. And on a cold, foggy morning in 1918, at the end of the 5th Battle of Ypres, he allegedly had Adolf Hitler in his sights, wounded, crawling after a chlorine gas attack, and Henry let history's most infamous villain crawl away to live to see another day. If you'd like the full story, check out my YouTube in my bio. This is just the Spark Notes. The battle took place near the village of Marcoing, and the British ultimately needed to cross this canal. And then Henry led his regiment up to one of the bridges on the canal, and you have to keep in mind, all these bridges were out. They had no way of crossing, so they had to take a bunch of wooden planks and place them on the bridge just to be able to get across. But the Germans were on the other side, and they were still shooting at him from across that way. So Henry, once again, hands and knees, crawling onto the bridge, grabbing planks and putting them down over the bridge so that people could ultimately cross amongst heavy machine gun fire. But Henry was not done. Once they were able to get across the canal and the main force got through, Henry and 8 of his men ended up pushing too far forward, and then they ended up getting themselves completely surrounded by the Germans. And I'm talking an overwhelming amount of Germans. I mean, in this position, they thought that it was hopeless. They were surrounded, they had no way to escape, and they had no backup. During all of this, he was wounded twice, once in the arm and once in the leg, and these wounds were considered rather nasty, and he would face pretty severe hospitalization after this battle. But yet, he still rallied these 8 men, managed to get them up and out of the position that they were in, amongst more machine gun fire, and he led a bayonet charge, reportedly fighting so fiercely that the enemy were completely driven into the hands of his waiting British comrades near the canal, causing them to take 37 prisoners in the process. But even after the Germans were in full rout, he refused to leave the field of battle. Like, he led parties into dugouts, and he ended up capturing another 20 more of the enemy. And though he was faint from loss of blood, he stayed until the fight was completely over. And as he and his men delved further into the fog, because a thick fog kind of settled in towards the later end of the day, and they went to try to uncover more German positions, he allegedly came across one young man who was crawling on all fours, completely blinded by a prior chlorine gas attack that had happened earlier in the fight. And Henry reportedly raised his rifle to this young man. I don't know what the words were that were exchanged. Henry, though, being the stand-up guy that he is, lowered his rifle, he nodded at this young man, and he let him crawl away. But that dispatch boy happened to be the one and only Adolf Hitler. And that is the story of 2 men that allegedly were destined to meet on that day. But this is alleged for a reason. It came about by word of mouth, and a lot of that word of mouth came from Hitler himself later before World War II. And Hitler is a known liar, so take it with a grain of salt. And that's why